Welcome to the Freedom CEO podcast. It's about becoming the chief decision maker over your life in order to step into a life of freedom. From business, health, wealth, charity, and giving back to just doing life on your own terms. I am your host, Shay Invidiata. I am an award-winning activist, change maker, and a multifaceted impact entrepreneur with over a decade of experience in business, philanthropy, and health and wellness. In this space, I'm going to be bringing you insights, not just from me, but from incredible thought leaders around the globe to help you start making decisions towards living a life of freedom so you can live a life you love. Are you ready, guys? Because we are going all in. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur, a dreamer on the cusp of taking the leap, or simply someone seeking inspiration and practical advice, this episode is a gold mine of knowledge. I sat down with the Sarah Swain, who is a high energy entrepreneur, community leader, and business strategist that has impacted thousands of lives with her booming voice, written words, and heart-led approach to business. As a former 9-to-5 corporate hustler who climbed the ladder at breaking speeds, Sarah realized she was helping the wrong people build their dreams. She left the matrix and now she's helping others do the same. We dive into Sarah's journey and discuss all things business and freedom. Get ready to challenge your perceptions and ignite your entrepreneurial spirit. Tune in and buckle up. She's one of my favorite business leaders, and most importantly to me, she ain't worried about speaking truth and defending freedom. Sarah Swain, welcome to the Freedom CEO podcast. I'm so happy that you're here today.
I am thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. You know, it's so interesting. Like when we think about mixing business with freedom, the conversation can really go in so many different directions, which our conversation might do that today. And that is also A-okay. Before we kind of dive into the now, what's happening in our world, what Sarah Swain is up to, what good little gold nuggets we can learn from you today, I want to just kind of backpedal a little into your background, unpack the story of your journey, and talking a little bit about the former 9-to-5 corporate ladder that you climbed. The hustle was real even then. And then we'll talk kind of more of like the present and now. So bring me back.
It feels like a totally different life when I go back into my corporate version of me. I was your typical ladder climbing, overachieving, ambitious to the point of probably causing harm to myself. I mean, I was all in on my career. And, hindsight 2020, looking back now, I really lacked self-awareness. I really lacked a connection to myself and what I actually wanted for my life. So when I turned 30, things started to get dicey for me because I started to ask questions like, is this all I'm supposed to do until I retire? Because I'm only 30 and I couldn't fathom continuing to do this for another 20, 30 years. And I started asking questions like who made 9-to-5 a thing? Who made an 8-hour workday? Who made Monday to Friday a thing? Why are we working 40 hours a week? Like, why is 2 weeks of vacation standard? Like everything just came crashing down on me and stopped making sense. And it really came down to this one question that I asked myself, and it was what success meant to me, because I had checked all the boxes, Shay. I went to school. I got the good grades. I did everything as best as humanly possible. I got married. I bought a house. We got a dog. Like we did all the things. I had paid vacation. I had full pension. I had an incredible benefits package with dental. Like I had a company car. And there I was in my late 20s, early 30s being like, I don't feel successful. Yet I did all these successful things that, as I was growing up, I was taught that these are the things that make you a successful adult, and this is how you lead a successful life. So I had to get a little bit doomsday on myself and fast forward to deathbed version of me and say, well, if I were to die and I look back on my life, would I be able to say that I lived a successful life? And the answer was absolutely not, because I didn't feel successful. So then the next question I had to ask myself was, well, what would make me feel successful if I did get to the end of my life and I could say, I did that right, I lived successfully, then what would that look like? And all of a sudden, these words like happiness and joy and freedom and time and laughter and play and time and time and time, like this kept coming up so loud, because this bizarro world of the traditional workforce, combined with cost of living and all of these different factors, we're spending a finite commodity called time in exchange for something that is actually abundant and renewable, which is money. Yet we're not taught this when we're growing up. So it stopped making sense to me that I had to invest my time, my most precious commodity, to earn this thing called money in order to be way too exhausted to even do anything with the money after I was done working. And if we're fortunate enough to make it to the traditional retirement age, which a lot of people don't get that far,
Right.
then we're allowed to start enjoying life. And that's the golden years. And we can start, it's like, what? So I had this midlife crisis at age, 30. And it was really an awakening of sorts, where I knew within me that this was not my path forward, that we had been fed a lie about what success actually means. And oddly enough, the tipping career for me was my career in retail pharmacy. And there were all sorts of things that I was just starting to question about a lot of stuff. And this was back in 2017. And so I had this incredible sense of misalignment. My body, my physical body was going to work every day. My soul was not. And it felt like I had to, put on this uniform, put on this mask every morning I left my house, and then I'd peel it off my swollen, inflamed body when I would get home. And eventually I had enough. It got too much, to the point where I was very tearful on a regular basis. And I'm not someone who sheds a lot of tears. and like, why can't I stop crying? I was a mess. And so I took a 4-week leave of absence, which is all my doctor gave to me, along with a prescription, which I did not take. And 2 weeks in, I had decompressed so much that I knew that I couldn't go back. There was absolutely no way that I was going to put myself back into the environment that was causing me so much harm. And I made the decision to hand in my resignation.
Wow.
And had no backup plan other than I know that I am meant to do something different. I'm meant to do something more. And I trust that I will figure this out. And so I did. That was my life starting end of 2017, early 2018, where I took the figurative leap of faith, as they call it, and haven't looked back.
It's such a crazy journey. And to put some context perspective, how many years were you in corporate before you got to that point in 2018?
Total 11 or 12, so over a decade.
Wow. Yeah. So, that's a long time to be feeling you want to be doing something more and redefining what success really looks like for you. Yeah. And we're also seeing today that there really is this challenge around what success does look like. Many people know Gary Vee, but he's really big on this right now in looking at exactly what you pointed out around this 9 to 5 and this grind and this hustle for somebody else to build up somebody else's dreams and life, and really taking a step back and going, what does success look like for you? And how can you go after that? How can you build that? versus building somebody else's dream, their time off, like their abundance, quite literally. So you had no plan B. So at this time, you didn't have a side hustle that you were working on at that
No,
point.
no. And
Right?
10 out of 10 don't recommend, because it's not for the faint of heart.
Sure. Yeah.
My husband was absolutely terrified that we were going to lose everything. I was the breadwinner of the family. I had a very lucrative corporate career, and I'm like, I'm just not going to do this anymore. I'm going to figure out how to make money appear out of thin air. And so I did. But what I really did was I had to give myself credit for all of the skill sets that I did have, that I had a lot of experience in providing. So I had to look at my corporate career as this place and this experience that gave me an opportunity to build a lot of skills and knowledge in certain areas. And where I thrived in my career, where I could have done this type of work until the end of time, was in leadership and team building and personal development with my staff, and getting everybody empowered and focused on their goals and their results and things like that. And that is why I had the success that I did in my career. That's why I kept getting promoted, is because I knew how to drive people towards something that was important to them. And I said, okay, what can I do with that? And so I started a business around just the generalization of empowerment and help people move towards something that was meaningful for them. So I had to take an inventory, almost like do a resume for myself.
Yeah.
And then submit it into myself. It's like, okay, we have these skills that we can work with. And that's literally how I monetized my mind, which we'll get into that later. But that's how it started, was giving myself credit for the knowledge and experience that I did have, and what I was able to create with that.
So I love diving into this kind of like in between, where you're in this no longer, but not yet. And that in between, and honoring that space in that waiting, can be very uncomfortable sometimes. There's a lot of uncertainty and the unknown. But like you alluded to, of taking the leap of faith and trusting the process, that this was all happening for you to bring you into something bigger and greater, that knowing who you are, it actually surpasses Sarah. It's bigger than Sarah. And so when you started this empowerment idea for other people and bringing them into what's important for them, what did that look like? What did you build?
Oh my gosh. I was just telling my clients this yesterday, because those beginning days, those are the ones that we don't often see or acknowledge or even think exist. When we find someone that either we hire to guide us, mentor us, coach us, or we stumble across someone's uber successful Instagram, like we don't realize those humble days of where it all began. And I shared this story just yesterday with my community, because I didn't even have an Instagram account. Like I had a Facebook profile,
right?
And I knew how to make a Facebook group. And there was a new function where you could go live on Facebook. And so I was like, okay, maybe I can create a community, bring everybody together, create this really high vibe space. And that's how I started my business, was in a private Facebook community, because I was terrified to be seen publicly. And
which is so crazy if you know who Sarah is today. Talk about this 180 completely.
180. Yeah, I think back on that. I'm like, wow, the growth period is real when you start taking action, and how much you actually can grow and expand into. So I remember I did my very first live, and I mean, someone who's high energy, I've got a huge source of energy in me. This gassed me. Like, I was like, it was such a big deal for me to go live. I just basically laid on the floor and like had to recover after I just went live on Facebook in this group. And I just started with a free community and made a pitch a few weeks later. Never pitched it. I'm like, how do I even set up a payment link? So I'm like, okay, I heard about this PayPal thing. I'm telling you, I knew nothing about creating a digital business of any
Right.
kind. And so I had to learn all of it. I hired a coach that specialized in digital stuff to help me understand, like, how do you make a button do this? And
Right.
how do you make an email automatically go into someone's inbox? Like, what is all that about? I had to learn it all from scratch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's where I started. And I pitched my first program. I think it was like $297. And then I got a client and I was like, oh, it's real. All of a sudden I realized, like, someone paid me, like someone sees the value in
Right.
what I am providing. And that was the reaffirmation I needed, that I'm like, I can do this. It just took one person to make me feel very validated in the fact that I just left my corporate career behind, left the stable biweekly paycheck behind. Like, someone just paid me $297. I've got this. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's how it started. It was such a simple approach.
Mhm.
Like, I need people to see what I can do, and I need a way for them to be able to pay me. And that is how simply it began for me.
So it's actually really fascinating because it's not that long ago that you started this,
Mm.
and 2020 became really the catalyst
Mhm.
for who Sarah Swain is today and
Mhm.
what you have done. And so, yeah, like when I think of the timeline, a lot of people, I think, if just landing on you and seeing you maybe for the first time would think that this has been the trajectory for quite some time. But really, we're talking about 5 years, 4.5 years type
Yep.
of work. So when you think of 2020, the world changed for everybody, good and bad. We all experienced it, but there was many of us who saw opportunity and choosing to become better instead of becoming bitter. And that wasn't easy, right? That it really was not easy from a mindset standpoint. And that's really where I got introduced to you, was in the middle of 2020. And connecting really, like, I said, we kind of met through business, but really I loved and I was grateful for the alignment around truth and freedom and how you were literally weaving it into the fabric of your brand and your
Mhm.
messaging. And so when you think of 2020 and this shift that was taking place, how did that for you basically revitalize your trajectory of what you wanted to do?
It's interesting because it revitalized me by completely breaking me first.
Mm, okay.
Um, I was as sleepy as they come
Right.
going into 2020. There were a lot of things, as I mentioned earlier, that I was like, this doesn't make any sense. In the healthcare, the
Right.
world of pharmacy that I was coming out of, I knew that was just all big business.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of things that I was questioning, and I was always that annoying person in my family that would say, have you guys thought of it this way? And everyone kind of roll their eyes and, get annoyed with me for always bringing up the controversial shit at the dinner table. And yeah, but I hadn't connected any dots at that point.
Right.
And in 2020, when everything started to shift, where my brain always goes is through the lens of business. Even when I was in corporate, I couldn't go into a retail store without looking at things through the lens of a corporate eye or a management eye, and that translated into my entrepreneurial journey too. So all of a sudden, when businesses started getting ordered to shut down and people were getting laid off, this was impacting people in my family. And I immediately saw the writing on the wall for the long-term trajectory of our economy. That's where my brain went. I'm like, oh, this isn't good. So I knew that with the skills that I had started coaching people and starting up businesses after I had figured out how to do that myself.
Right.
Around end of 2018, early 2019, helping people build, basic digital framework to launch something. And I'd been doing that for a couple of years by the time 2020 happened. And I realized that if people are just all of a sudden out of work and have absolutely no idea how to start a business, we're going to have to teach people how to create their own economy.
Mhm.
Now, with the woke movement that also struck down in 2020, I would say that was what actually broke me. It wasn't the quote unquote pandemic. It was the realization that I actually had a lot of work to do to even know who the hell I was, because it was so easy to rock me in 2020. It was so easy to make me feel afraid that I was going to do something wrong, that I was going to get canceled, that I was going to lose my business. And I was being dictated by those things. And I heard this voice in my mind and it said, Sarah, you don't even know who the fuck you are. And it was so visceral for me that I ended up putting my coaching business down for about 6 months because I'm like, I gotta figure some stuff out here. There's a significant disconnect. And it's interesting because these external factors that were kind of pushing me in my corporate career, those didn't go away when I left corporate and became an entrepreneur. I was still being influenced by way too many things that were external to myself. And that is what the giant mirror of 2020 was for me. It's like, you need to root yourself in who you are. But I had to figure out who that was. So I went on this soul discovering mission of like, who the hell even am I? And so 2020 was a gut-wrenching year of self-discovery. 2021 is when I started coming home to myself. And that's also when I was really putting together all of the pieces of what was actually occurring in our world, because I could see the economic collapse coming. I could see the political divide growing. I could see the dangerous tactics that our politicians were deploying against us. I could see what the media was doing. And then 2021, it all kind of went like, oh my God, I'm awake. My eyes just went, holy shit. It all just kind of, all these like pieces of, weird stuff that had been floating around in my peripheral in my adult years, all of a sudden went boom. And my eyes were wide open. Simultaneously, this is what allowed me to root myself in who I am and be unapologetic about that because my mission to speak truth felt way bigger than any insecurity that I had. And my word for 2021 was rooted. I was like, I need to anchor into this so intensely because I know the winds are going to be fiercely strong. And so 2021 was really when I emerged. And I say I, because it really is the real me that's here now. Right. It's not this masked version of me that's masquerading around as this, hyper curated brand so that everyone has a controlled sense of my image. It's, I would say, another 180-degree swing for me that took place over that year. And that's how everything started to click into place because the parallels between freedom and entrepreneurship are so strong. The correlation there between freedom and entrepreneurship is so strong. I mean, freedom was why I left corporate. I wanted to be free, to be able to have a life that I actually loved. Right. And so when I woke up, I was like, okay, we've got this going on. And here again, going through my own resume of skill sets, like, what can I bring to the table here? A lot of it fit really well. And that's how I started to really angle a lot of my content and get people to start thinking about how we bolster ourselves and embolden ourselves and create a greater sense of independence for ourselves so that regardless of what goes on in our disturbing world, we can sleep peacefully knowing that we have our own backs.
Yeah, it's very powerful. Sarah, you talk about anchoring in, and that's what you did in 2021 for yourself. I've shared with you as well around, I really believe that this year and in this time, if people haven't done that already, it is so vital, because we've got what I believe is this little gap that's happening where there's a normality that's being disguised right now, but it's an opportunity for those people who maybe can relate to how you felt in 2020, going, who the fuck am I? Not even just what am I here for, but like, what do I believe? And there's been a lot of people, you and I both have many people in our communities that have been very much afraid, and rightfully so, for either not even necessarily needing to use their platforms to speak truth, but just in their own families, friends, because of this cancel culture, but they can feel this burning and maybe can identify and relate to this. I really don't know who I am. And when Sarah's talking about being rooted and anchoring, you feel that like in your heart, like, I need to do that too. I believe right now it is so vital that those who have not done that yet really take this time to spend time with yourself and figure out what it is that you believe in. What are your value systems? What are your pillars? What is going on, and researching. And so I would love, I don't know if there's certain things that you did to help, along that discovery path, if you will. Mm-hmm. But I'd love for you to maybe just share a couple of things that you did to really get rooted, anchor in, and find, who Sarah is today.
Yeah. The one thing that really, really helped me in understanding, like, what am I actually willing to do? What do I actually believe? What are the hills I'm willing to die on? I had to understand what my own value system actually was. And I had done so many values identification exercises, like in the world of personal development. It's like, even I think it's Braving the Wilderness by Brené Brown. She's got like a or maybe it's Daring to Lead. It's one of her books anyway, but she's got like a list of like, pick your values. And it's like, you look at this list of, 50 or 60 things. You're like, well, they're all kind of valuable. Like, how do I say I'm for this, but this one's not a value to me? And I had to ditch all of that and pay attention to how my physical body actually felt when it came to what was viscerally important to me. And so I think my value systems at the time were like, I don't even remember. It was like, it was stuff that's important, but if all of a sudden push came to shove, right, I could easily let go of some of those things. And so were they actually my value system? What it actually came down to when I really sat with myself, and by sitting with myself, I mean, I gave myself space and silence. Silence for me was critical because I needed to hear what I was saying. And so I would sit in my home with no music on. I wouldn't have a podcast playing. I wouldn't be reading a book. I wouldn't have my phone in my hand. I'd be sitting here in this dreadful, dreadful stillness to understand like what is actually happening within me. Mm-hmm. What it boiled down to, my value systems were freedom and integrity. Those two things are in my DNA. These are things that no matter what happens, I will never compromise those things. I will never bend on these things. You could put a gun to my head and these things will not leave me. And so I had to understand that in order to be like, okay, am I willing to say something then? If I'm willing to die on the values of freedom and integrity, what on earth am I so worried about happening to me on the internet? Right. So I had to, but the sense of being rooted, I had to like visualize myself being anchored into the ground so that visually, if something did try to knock me over, if someone did try to come for me, I would still be able to stand there sturdy, because that's how important this was to me. So identifying my values was critical. Stillness and space and silence. Like, I'm telling you, there's nothing more uncomfortable than that when you are trying to figure out who the hell you are, because you don't recognize the voices that are in your head. You're like, whose belief is that? Like, is that even mine?
Totally.
Where did that come from? At what point in my life did I accept that as the truth? And how was I so easily influenced? And the other major factor was putting my ass in therapy. I was terrified of what was going on inside my physical body because I didn't know where to put anything. When they talk about the awakening, I always used to read about people having awakenings. I thought it was some beautiful, blissful moment where the sky lit up and everything was fucking shiny and everything was gold. And it's like, that's not what that is. When you wake up, it is the most painful, terrifying, dreadful experience. And I didn't know what to do with it because my entire family, everyone in my life, thought that I had gone completely mentally unstable. Trying to tell everybody about, like, but this. Didn't know how to communicate anything because I was so horrified by coming to know so many things. And I felt this intuitive hit that if I don't get support for this is going to manifest itself into some illness of some sort, because I didn't know where to put it. I knew it was staying in my body. I knew the energy, the bad energy, was staying in my body, and I knew that meant it was going to manifest into illness. So I put my ass in therapy and at least gave it an opportunity for my therapist described it as the loop needed to stop being a loop and needed a cutoff point and somewhere else to flow out, so that it would physically get out of my body. And so that's what really helped me stabilize. And that was my 2021 journey. It's like, okay, we are now back. So 2020 was all about, like, who even am I? 2021 was, oh my God, what do I do with all this information now? And 2021 was also when I started speaking out. So I had a lot of different moving parts at the same time. So it really wasn't until 2022 that this more rock solid version of me really started to show up. And that is how a lot of people know me now and have come into my space. But that is the behind the scenes journey of what it took for me to become this version of me, or unbecome, I guess, all that wasn't me.
And this month, I mean, this is a really nice segue. We can talk about Monetize Your Mind. Really was birthed in June of 2022, right?
Yeah.
Which happy 1 year.
Thank you. Yeah, we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary. My gosh. Monetize Your Mind came on the coattails of, again, seeing things from the lens of business. And similar to 2020, when I'm like, we got to figure out how to create our own economy. If all of a sudden they can just take it away from us and people are left with no other option, we got to figure out how to create an economy. I wasn't strong enough to be able to hold the space for that in 2020 without knowing who I was and what I was willing to stand for. I couldn't hold that container, even though I had launched a container called Create the Economy. I ended up refunding everyone because I was like, I was like, launch, never mind. We're not doing this. I'm not okay. I got to figure some stuff out. And when the vaccine mandates hit in 2021, we saw the same thing starting to happen that we saw in 2020, only this was based on a person's individual choice. Where in 2020, it's like, oh, you have to close your store or your business or your restaurant. You can't go to work. 2021 was all about, if you do not do what we want you to do, we're going to take your livelihood away from you. And it gutted me watching so many people, millions of people across Canada, feel like they had to trade in their value system in order to keep their paycheck for this lie of job security. And this hit very close to home for members in my own family. And that was when I was like, fuck this. Like, this just, there was a fire that lit in me. And I'm like, I need to support these people. People need to know that you can monetize your mind. The amount of people who were literally saying the words, I don't have a choice, broke my heart, because I'm like, yes, you do. You do. You have just been victimized by the indoctrination of what it means to create a livelihood for yourselves and the very narrow scope of how we were taught to view that. And what we had to do, what we had to sacrifice, AKA our time, in order to earn this thing called money. And we're really putting our livelihood in the hands of someone other than ourselves, whether it's an employer or a boss or a company, whatever it is. What if they change their mind on something? What if that company closes? What if it's no longer? What if your boss leaves and the new boss comes in, they don't like you? Like, the amount of risk we're putting in our livelihood in the hands of someone else. And then boom, if you don't do this thing, this experimental thing where we don't have any information on this thing, if you don't do this, we're going to take your paycheck away from you. And so this, like, I called it empowered rage at the time, because it was like just this, like, absolutely not are we going to allow this to be such a dictating force in our life. And, you know, it like zoomed me back to what I did when I started my business back in, 2017, 2018. I'm like, well, what do I have to offer? What are the skill sets I have? How did I bring value to myself? How did I give that value to other people? How did I monetize those things? I was like, I need to like desperately teach people how to do this so that they always know they have choice no matter what. That is the only job security, is when you know that you can create money whenever you need it at any time by recognizing the value that you have to give in exchange for that money, as opposed to earning it by sacrificing your time. That was the paradigm shift that I became hell-bent on helping people understand. And so Monetize Your Mind hit the marketplace in 2022, and it took off like a bat out of hell, because people realized that what they deeply desired was safety and security.
Right.
That's what it boils down to. That's at the root of it. This isn't necessarily about, how do I create this passion project of mine. This is so deep, what we do in Monetize Your Mind, because this is our freedom.
Yeah.
When we can understand how to create money and recognize our power to do so through an infinite number of ways, the ability for someone else to manipulate us becomes almost obsolete. And that's where we're like, we're just going to do us. We're going to live our lives. We're going to create this magnificent future for ourselves, even though the world is on fire. And that sense of empowerment that gives back to us, it also gives us that anchor point of something beautiful and bigger than us to set our sights on, to keep us focused and, creating solutions for other people. There have never been more problems in the world than there are today, which means we have never needed more solutions than we do today, which means the opportunity for entrepreneurship is so abundant right now.
Right. Yeah.
But people need to step up to that plate and answer that call and start taking action on these things, instead of just kind of crossing our fingers that, I don't think they'll ever do this to us again, or
they will.
Yeah.
It's coming.
I hate to break it to you.
Yeah, that was just the hors d'oeuvres. The appetizers were just served.
That was the snack.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, main course is still on its way.
Yeah, exactly. And they might throw another appetizer in between the real main course. So it's like, you got to get ready. Sarah, as I hear you talking, I almost can hear like the devil advocate going, yeah, that sounds great. And almost like easy. Like it's very simple to just say, okay, well, I'll just quit my job and I'll become an entrepreneur, or, do something where I find value and I monetize my mind, I monetize my passion, my values, whatever it is. But I think a lot of people are really stuck.
Yes.
And this goes back to the root of like not knowing who you are, right? So you've got to go back and do that groundwork first. But when you hear people saying, I don't know what I have to give, like I'm going to take, for example, a teacher's a good example. Well, maybe they're not actually. That's probably not a good example, but like a police officer, for example, somebody who is like really plugged into the system. You're on shift work, not just 9 to 5, but you're on shift work. You have health benefits, you have a pension, and that's like all you know, right? So what value, how do you step away from that?
Yeah.
That's a really big risk. That's a really big leap. And I know part of, your mission just inherently of who you are now is really believing to help people unplug from what you and I would call the matrix, unplug from this system, the indoctrination that, that we've been so climatized and desensitized to all of this stuff around. But for those listening right now, what would you say to them of going, I don't know what I would have to offer?
Yeah. Two different approaches to this. Number one, before you rule out not having anything to offer, give yourself more credit. And actually, what I've told people in workshops that I've hosted, because that is a huge question. It's like, I don't know what the hell I have to offer. But if you were to actually go write a resume for an employee, you'd have no problem coming up with a list of skills and experience and assets or certifications or some form of education to be able to put on that and present yourself to this other person. You'd have no problem doing that. And so an exercise that can be helpful is to literally write a resume for yourself. Be like, if I was to hire me, what could I bring to the table? And it's almost like you have to like mind fuck yourself a little bit, pretend you're applying for a job instead of, all of a sudden out of nowhere identifying as the self-sustaining entrepreneur. That might be too big of a stretch mentally. So just pretend like you're applying for a job. Be like, what do I actually have to bring to the table? That's step one, is actually take the time to sit with what you actually do have. What are, even outside. So if you are a police officer, you're a police officer for the shifts that you have, but what are you doing outside of work? Do you have any community experience? Are you volunteering anywhere? Did you have part-time work before you were a police officer? Do you do anything socially that, all of these skill sets that we don't give ourselves credit for on a traditional resume do hold a lot of weight. They just may not make any sense for the corporation or the government entity that you're applying to. So it really takes us to like bend our thinking in a way to be like, okay, let me just put aside what I consider skill sets for a job and really think about what I actually am good at that might not have anything to do with my policing career, right?
Yeah.
What else am I really, really good at? What do my friends and family always compliment me for? Or what do I get criticized for all the time? Because often there's a lot of strengths in where we get criticized the most. It's like, maybe we should start looking at why everyone's so put off by this aspect of me, right? There's something to be said about those things, but you have to take the time to really think about that before you outwardly say, I don't have anything to offer, because I will bet 100% of the time that's a lie.
Yeah.
Now, the second thing that we can do if we're really struggling to figure out what skill sets do I have, we got to understand that entrepreneurship, we're playing a long game here. This is a marathon, not a sprint. This is something where even if it took you 5 years, even if it took you 10 years, even if it took you 15 years. So say you're 30 years old, like I was when I left corporate. By the time I turned 45, I had two choices. I could either say, well, I'm still in the same world of corporate, just in a different role, doing different things, or I could have spent 15 years betting on myself.
Amen. Yeah.
Well, and where can you go in 15 years if you bet on yourself every single day? Yeah. And so this doesn't necessarily have to be this overnight, oh my God, I've got to figure out how to do this immediately so that the new world order doesn't impact me. What if we just set our sights on 2030, our definition of what we want 2030 to be? Like, what can I do in the next 7 years?
Right.
to bet on me. And maybe that means you got to go out and learn something new. You have to go out and practice a skill until you become masterful at it. And what if that took you 2 years of those 7 years to be able to become so freaking good at something that you could turn around by 2025 and be like, I'm ready to go. Let's start this business, and then go all in on those 5 years. What if it took you till 2030 to completely change your life? Would it still not be worth that wait? Because 2030 is going to happen regardless.
Right.
So you have a choice of like, what kind of 2030 do you want to be experiencing here? Do you want to either be in the same vulnerable position where if there's another opportunity for you to be manipulated again, do you want to be in the position to have to make choices that aren't conducive to your value system? Or do you want to be in a position to be like, oh, they're doing that again? Okay, well, what am I focusing on right now and who am I helping?
Yeah.
Those are the choices that we have. So, give yourself way more credit than you are. If you're listening and you think you don't have anything to offer, you do. You just have to start thinking differently about what we have been taught to value about ourselves when it comes to our skills and things that we can contribute, or ways in which we can provide solutions to another person. And two, long game. Okay. I'm not about a fast cash or fast wins kind of person. This is foundational stuff that we're doing when we're creating our business, when we're monetizing our mind. We're creating a new foundation. And it's got to be strong. It's got to be sturdy. And if it takes us 10 years, so be it. 10 years from now, you're going to look back on the day that you decided to be like, thank God I made the choice to start moving in a different direction. But our world is so hyper fast paced and social media makes things look really, really skewed that we think that 10 years, if it takes us 10 years, then it means that we're a failure. And so we really have to challenge our belief systems, and really just continue to be like, that's okay. It's taken me an extra year. It's okay. I really sucked at that thing that I just launched. It's okay. No one bought that thing that I just put out there. It's okay. I'm going to keep betting on myself over and over and over and over again until what you know you are capable of is staring back at you in your face.
Yeah. And, it's so interesting because we are not conditioned to think that we should suck at something for a period of time, right? There's a lot of fear around embarrassment, that fear of failure, being scared to try something new. Yeah. And we've all used these analogies where you look at when you first learned how to walk, like if you stopped after trying the first time you fell and you just crawled for the rest of your life, like that wouldn't serve you, but you didn't have that embarrassment factor. You didn't have that fear factor. You didn't have the knowledge that other people around you were even like walking, right? Like it's so interesting when we put that into perspective. Yet most entrepreneurs will tell you, like, are you willing to literally suck at something for a good period of time before one day, like it just starts to click, like you're refining your skill, you're refining your tactic, your strategy, and being willing to just try things. And some things aren't going to work out. And there's lessons in that. And I think it's incredible that you actually gave an example of yourself of launching something and not only just pulling it, but also just saying, I'm going to refund everybody. Because that was the best thing to actually serve that client too. It wasn't so much as about you, even though you didn't feel you were ready, but to move forward with that would have actually done them a disservice, And so being able to be kind of in that space and going, yep, I'm not ready. And that is A-okay, and being confident in that. And I think a lot of people are really afraid of that.
Yes.
So being uncomfortable, willing to screw up, willing to mess it up for a good period of time before it starts to work. And when I think of the way forward, navigating the future economy, and I know you say this line as well, but the entrepreneurs of today creating the economy of tomorrow. This is an opportunity that is so real for so many people because the hope and the dream and the wish of going back to life of pre-2020 is never going to happen. And there's some things about pre-2020 that I do love and I do wish. And there's a lot of things that I'm really grateful for that have moved myself personally into opportunities, relationships, lifestyle, countries, where if 2020 didn't happen, maybe it would have happened at some point, but I was able to seize that opportunity. And I think for anybody listening right now, that opportunity is still available, because if you can wake up and realize that we aren't going back and that the future is how we're going to shape it, and you can be an active participant in that. As you said, how do you want 2030 to look like? What do you want to be celebrating 2030 of how your life is going to be? Because it's not going to get any easier. Like, you and I both know. And this isn't what this episode is about, but I mean, we could totally do a whole other episode on what is coming. But it's living your life with that intentionality of taking ownership for what is to come and what you can control. And so I want to ask you, Sarah, because you mentioned there's so many problems right now in our world. Therefore, there's opportunity for so many solutions to come in. What are some of those gaps that you've identified that maybe aren't for your brand or your passion, but you're like, I'd really love if somebody just started doing this in the world, because that would serve humanity?
Gosh, there's so many things. I think the biggest thing is the opportunity for the next generation, the people working with kids right now. The opportunity to reform education, the opportunity to equip children, the youth, teenagers, young adults with all of the things that we didn't get to experience, that caused us to go down these paths of like, who am I and what am I doing with my life and why am I having a midlife crisis at age 30? To me, that's the biggest impact. The biggest opportunity there is to be preventative with the up and coming generation, to start equipping them with common sense life skills and decision making and confidence, and how to actually be connected with yourself, so that the decisions that they're making in young adulthood are far more serving to themselves and to the future that they want to create, and that they understand the impact that they can have, and that they're not just meant to be an employee for someone else's dream, unless that's what they genuinely want. But I would bet if we really got to the root of why people are actually creating a traditional workforce career for themselves, it's because they don't understand that there's other options that exist. As far as things on the political front, I mean, we have a massive, massive opportunity there as well, to create systems, create programs, create education platforms. That's a big, big, big missing link right now in our world, because anything that is being fed to the masses right now is coming through mainstream media. And so there has to be other platforms and voices and grassroots organizations that are coming to the table to provide information and education and reform on that front as well. I mean, really, it's to me, the biggest opportunities are in education and in leadership across just about anything. Because when I realized in 2021 that everything I thought about the world and how it worked was actually a lie, I realized I was like, so who's going to be the people who are teaching about how the world actually works? And I think that lies heavily in the world of, the freedom keeping community, because we feel that responsibility to try to educate and inform. And the reality is we can't do it all. And we certainly can't do it while we also have businesses and brands to continue to remain potent and credible, so that people continue to listen to us. when we're trying to be like, well, did you know this? And did you know this? And did you know this? And did you know that this is how this system actually works? And that's how that system actually works. For me, it's leadership and education across all fronts. There is an infinite amount of room for people to step into positions to start basically creating new paths forward into a new world where things work way better. When you think about any industry, we got to make a new one. Literally any industry, we got to make a new one. And so it's almost like every single thing that exists in the world has an opportunity to be duplicated in a better way. So we're going to need a lot of entrepreneurs to start coming to the table, to start creating these things.
Big time. And with the opportunity, I think if people are receiving this and going, okay, I'm ready, I'm willing, but maybe some of the hows and needing inspiration is still, it hasn't clicked for them yet. There is something really exciting happening in Canada, first of its kind, in September. And I would love, Sarah, for you to just share what is this gift and how people, this is your opportunity. Like if you are listening right now, this is about answering the call. And September is really going to help ignite your own catalyst. So tell us what's happening in September.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this, because I have goosebumps right now every time I start thinking about the MYM, first ever MYM conference and retreat that we're hosting in Kananaskis, Alberta, September 16th, 17th, 18th. And the way that I've been describing this is my figurative gauntlet that I am throwing down here in Canada to give entrepreneurs, business owners, or aspiring entrepreneurs and business owners this opportunity to respond to this call and come into this space with a room full of hundreds of other like-minded people who are all kind of in the know of, I think this is going to be on us to figure out what this looks like moving forward. Certainly when it comes to our economy, 2020 me wasn't strong enough to be able to hold space for something of this magnitude. But now, after going through these dark nights of the soul and reemerging as actually, who I am, recognizes that this is a personal calling for me too, to help entrepreneurs know that even if they have a side hustle and they're making an extra few hundred or a couple $1,000s a month, they are a contributor to the economy. And we have been conditioned to, when we think about the economy, it's become synonymous with government, as though it's the responsibility of our government to be able to fix or destroy our economy. But who's actually the ones who stimulate it? It's entrepreneurs and business owners. That's just a fact. So when we bring that awareness back, be like, oh, that's actually within our power to course correct the trajectory of a very dangerous path that we're on, especially here in Canada, specifically economically speaking. This is an exciting opportunity for us to reclaim that power and recognize that it's us as entrepreneurs and business owners that get to create the economy of tomorrow. Instead of sitting back and being terrified of how bad this is going to get, let's figure out how to play bigger. Let's figure out how to create more job opportunities. Let's figure out how to create more revenue that we can then pour back into the economy, especially into the economy that is supporting a newer, healthier, more prosperous, more independent path forward. Meaning that we're not falling victim to this other path that we're kind of having a little bit of a carrot dangled in front of us, being, come over here, we'll subsidize this and we'll give you money for this and we'll give you a payout for this. And, this system is creating an unprecedented amount of dependence. And so this is a call to rise. If you are an entrepreneur or considering becoming one, this is the room you want to be in. This is the energy you want to be in. And when I say this is like the gauntlet that I'm throwing down, this is what I love so much about live events, is that the transformation is immediate. It happens so potently. You can feel it in your physical body that a transformation is occurring. You're not the same person as when you came into that room on day one. So this conference is all about equipping you with skills to understand like what to actually do, how to grow your business, how to start this thing, how to get into the right networks and expand your own sense of community, strengthen yourself. And the finale of this event is all about bringing it all back into the heart space and really deeply rooting yourself back into who you are, what you're here to do, so that when you go home after this event, it's not forgotten. So when people ask you, like, what is this kind of business conference? Don't even think of it as a business conference. It is something that is so much more than just coming in and kind of being motivated and learning some new skills. This is, I would say, the beginning of a significant movement here in Canada to re-empower, re-inspire, and re-strengthen the entrepreneurs that we have here and to take our power back. So really excited about it.
Oh, I love it. And, I'll give you guys a little insight, me knowing Sarah and where this is going to grow to this year. It's at a hotel that can seat a few hundred people, 1,000. Like, what's the capacity?
400.
Okay. Yeah. So capacity is 400, but let me tell you where this is going. It is going to be at the ACC, filled out with thousands of people. I don't know what it is in Alberta or, like
the Saddle Dome.
Okay, there you go. So this is where it has the potential to grow to. And Sarah, knowing you and your vision and your heart, like I said at the beginning, you shifting and moving into entrepreneurship was not about you, that the purpose is so much bigger than you and this legacy that you're building. And I am so grateful for your voice. And I know where this is going to grow to. And in the meantime, if you need a little bit of encouragement, if you're going, okay, like I'm feeling that, when you kind of get that exciting butterflies feeling in your stomach, if you're feeling that right now, I encourage you to tap in more to this conversation and what Sarah and I have been talking about. And I'm going to put everything in the show links. So the tickets to the conference, you can plug into that. It's also when you follow Sarah on Instagram, if you're not doing that already, the link is in her bio, but we're going to link up everything. And I would encourage you, and before I let you go, Sarah, do you want to quickly talk about The Sovereign, your book, which is a beautiful collaboration with other freedom fighters?
Yeah.
And I think it would bring a lot of encouragement to some people.
Yeah. Oh God, I'm like getting chills and teary eyed as soon as I saw you lift that up. I'm like, geez. Yeah, this book is a very, very special and meaningful place in my heart. And a part of my business journey that I didn't share here today was that one of the things that I started was a publishing house before I went, full tilt solely into business coaching. So yeah, I've actually helped over 120 authors publish their stories. And so again, me taking an inventory, I'm like, what are the skill sets that I have that I can provide value with and bring solutions to the table? And just knowing how gravely we have and continue to be censored when it comes to sharing what has occurred and what personal impact has been and things of that nature. Digitally, it's very easy for us to kind of be deleted and erased and kind of wiped off the face of the virtual world. So I said, okay, well, I know how to publish books. So let's make sure we get something in writing here so that, thinking about down the road, is there something that we can leave behind that is very difficult to pretend doesn't exist? We got to get this onto paper. Right. So it was actually on the tails of the convoy that I said, does anyone want to write a book? Does anyone want to share their stories about, what your experience has been in the last couple of years? And all I gave to the authors who raised their hand and be like, count me in, these other 14 other incredible humans that co-wrote this book with me. All I said to them, I said, just share your path to personal freedom and what that has meant for you. And we all collided because of what these times have brought. And so it was really interesting working with these authors and, helping them craft their stories, because we all arrived in the same spot, but the path that each of us took to get here is so different from one person to the next. So what you'll find when you read the book is that you'll feel a piece of yourself in somebody's story. There will be something in there that you can connect to. And especially if you're of, who's freedom, keeping community, and maybe you're in a position where you feel like you're the only person who is experiencing this right now, or maybe you feel a little crazy. Maybe you are just opening your eyes and starting to question your sanity. This is a book that you're going to want to read that will immediately validate your feelings and your experience, and just make you feel a little bit more at home in a very strange and bizarre world that we're living in right now. So a big shout out to all the other authors in The Sovereign. Their stories are like, they're burned into my soul. And we've sold thousands of copies of this book. Like when it went out like bananas. So it's available on Amazon right now.
I love it. And again, it's in the show link. So make sure you click it, make it super easy for you. No excuses. You can go and grab it and support not just Sarah, but the other 14 freedom voices that are in here. But this really, I think it is a stepping stone, almost like a workbook to the conference, and that's really what I was thinking of. Like when I think of people being like, I need that inspiration. I need that encouragement. And when we learn from other people's stories, it ignites something in us, because if they can do it, they're not any more special, any more different. We all bleed the same way. We all have the same 24 hours. It can be empowering when you hear it. So I really look at The Sovereign as a workbook before you show up at the MYM conference. Grab your tickets. This is going to be sold out. So if you wait, you're going to be really sorry. You're going to have to wait for Sarah to open up at a major stadium. So you can wait last minute and maybe still get a ticket. So don't do that. And if you're a business owner, it is a write-off. So utilize that. Better for you, less for the government. This is what we want.
Yep.
Same thing with this book. You could write it off as a business expense as well. So I hope that brings encouragement to people. I'm really excited to see how this is going to have the ripple effect in Canada. And Sarah, because you are a CEO and you are a freedom warrior, it's so natural that you would be on my podcast, The Freedom CEO. But I want to ask you, in closing, when you think of being the CEO of your life and taking ownership over the decisions in your life, how has that brought you freedom?
I feel like that's everything. To have complete ownership and complete responsibility of my life is freedom. And if we look at how we have been taught to think about, hey, this is just on you. We've been taught that that's almost like a scary, daunting thing. It's like, it's only on me. Like, who's going to come help me? Who's going to do this with me? So we have two ways to look at responsibility and decision making. It's either we can look at it like, oh shit, like no one else is going to do this for me. Or we could be like, oh shit, like I'm the only one that this comes down to. That is awesome. Because I can bet on myself 100% of the time. Even if I don't get it right, I trust myself to course correct.
Yeah.
And knowing that literally we have everything we need is freedom. So, making that shift out of, I actually don't need to rely on anything outside of myself in order to create the life that I want. That is the journey to personal freedom. And I think that once that clicks for people would be willing to plow through a brick wall to understand what personal freedom actually means and how it actually feels on the inside of your body.
So good. So true. So good. Sarah, thank you so much for being here today. Obviously, you're going to be back, and I cannot wait to do the follow-up in either 6 months' time or a year from now, and just checking in on how everything is growing. And yeah, I'm just excited. I'm excited for the future of Canada, and I'm grateful for you and Monetize Your Mind and for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a great conversation.
Thanks for tuning in to the Freedom CEO podcast. If you got value out of today's show, I would love for you to leave a review as it will help my show reach other people as well. Feel like spreading the love? You know what to do. Click the like and subscribe button. Also, hop over to Instagram and share today's episode in your stories. Remember to tag Shay Invidiata and the Freedom CEO. My DMs are always open, so drop me a line. I'd love to connect. Until next time, keep owning your decisions to live a life of freedom. Live a life you love.